Welcome! Reading Goodnight Stories with Bored Grandma. Hello, grandchildren. Grandma here. Are you ready for bed? Do you have your teeth brushed? If so, then here we go. Tonight, I'm going to read to you my big book of fairy tales by Peter Stevenson. Retold by Louisa Somerville. Dedicated to Isabella.
Hi, everybody.
Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, a queen was christening her baby daughter. She had invited 12 fairies to be godmothers. The queen held a fabulous feast and celebration, and the fairies were having a wonderful time. Soon it was time for each godmother to give the baby princess a gift. One by one, the fairies stepped up to the cradle to greet the child. The first fairy gave her the gift of beauty. The second presented her with generosity. Others gave her happiness and health. Just when the queen thought her daughter had everything she needed, the doors were thrown open and a powerful and nasty fairy flew in. The queen gasped in shock, and she had forgotten to invite her. "How dare you forget me?" raged the fairy. "I, too, have a gift for your daughter. When she is 16 years old, she will prick her finger on a spindle and die." The fairy stormed out, leaving the queen in floods of tears. "Wait," said a tiny voice. "All is not lost. I haven't given my gift yet." The queen looked up to see the smallest fairy of all standing by the crib. "I can't undo the spell," the fairy said, "but I can change it a little. My present to your daughter is a gift of love. She will not die, but she will sleep for 100 years until love comes to rescue her. She will be awoken by the kiss of a prince who truly loves her." Well, the smallest fairy's gift was certainly better than nothing, so the queen dried her tears. However, she still could not believe that the smallest fairy's wish might come true. She set about ordering that all the spindles in the kingdom be destroyed. The little princess gurgled happily in her crib, unaware of the drama going on. But the queen slept not a wink that night for fear of what might happen to her child. 16 years passed, and the princess had grown up beautiful and happy, healthy and generous. She was also quite inquisitive, and one day she was wandering about the castle when she came to a door she had never noticed before. She opened it and went into the room. There was an old woman sitting at a spindle, spinning beautiful thread. Now the princess had never seen a spindle before, as all of those in the land had been destroyed. Curiosity drove her towards the old woman. "Oh, that looks fun. Let me have a go," said the princess. But as she stepped forward, she tripped over the old woman's cat. She fell towards the spindle needle and pricked her middle finger. A deep red drop of blood fell on the floor. Immediately, the princess sank down to the floor and fell into a deep sleep. In that very same instant, everyone in the castle fell asleep too. The cooks fell asleep as they tended the roasting spit in the kitchen, and the horses fell asleep in the stable yard with their riders still in their saddles. The queen, who had been taking tea and cakes at the card table, leaned back heavily in her chair, fell soundly asleep, and started to snore. The cat fell asleep as it was about to pounce on a mouse, and even the mouse slept soundly. Only the two fairies were still awake, and they were arguing about who was the most powerful. Then something even stranger happened. The ground seemed to heave, and suddenly 1,000 thorny roses burst through and climbed the castle walls, covering it in a beautiful scented barrier. Soon, nothing of the castle could be seen except for very tallest turret. The years passed, and the thorns around the castle grew thicker and thicker. At the same time, the legend of the bad fairy's curse upon Sleeping Beauty spread to lands far and wide. As time went by, many brave princes tried to cut down the briars, but not one succeeded. Countless young men lost their lives in the Forest of Thrones. One day, 100 years after the princess had pricked her finger, a handsome prince came riding towards the castle. He had seen Sleeping Beauty in a dream, and his heart went out to her in true love. He was determined to be the one to cut his way through the thorns, but as he looked at the castle from a distance, he could not imagine how he would possibly achieve this. The prince looked at the beautiful and strange tangle of roses and thorns. "I wonder why they are there," he asked himself. But as he crossed the bridge towards them, a strange and wonderful thing happened. The roses parted in front of him until he could see the castle doors. The prince made his way cautiously into the castle. The sight that met his eyes made him gasp. There were bodies all over the place. Some were slumped over tables. Others lay on chairs. At first, he thought everybody was dead, until he heard the guards snoring. "They're all sleeping," the prince whispered to himself. He tiptoed around, fearing they might wake, and make his way up the stairs. At last, he came to the room where the princess lay. "Oh, she is so lovely," whispered the prince as he gazed down at Sleeping Beauty. He couldn't resist leaning over and giving her a tiny kiss. Straight away, the princess opened her eyes and smiled. "You took your time," she said. "But what a great way to wake up! How long have I been asleep, by the way?" she added, yawning and rubbing her eyes. 100 years! But don't worry, you haven't aged a bit," replied the prince. It's time to get up now, he continued, taking her gently by the hand. The prince picked the princess up and carried her down the stairs. All around were the sounds of people waking up. The cooks were clattering around the kitchen. The horses were whining in the stables, and the queen shouted, "I win!" None of them realized they had been asleep for 100 years. "Hello, Mama," said the princess. "I'm sorry I overslept." "Overslept?" replied the queen, looking puzzled. "But I'd only just settled down to cards. Anyway, who's your friend?" she continued, eyeing the prince suspiciously. "Oh, this is my handsome prince, and I'm going to marry him, if that's all right with you," said the princess. "That will be just perfect," said the queen, "as long as you don't invite any bad fairies to the wedding." So the prince and Sleeping Beauty were married the next day. They invited the queen and everyone at the castle and all the good fairies to the wedding, and they lived happily ever after. And I'm glad to say that the nasty fairy did not turn up at the wedding. In fact, she was never seen again. The end. Now off to dreamland you go.